Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for September 16th of 2023, and currently we have a slight risk for central Texas, as well as another marginal threat for the Midwest into some of the central plains. It does extend from southern Wisconsin across parts of southern and eastern Iowa, as well as western Illinois and northern Missouri, as well as some northeastern Kansas and southeastern Nebraska. Um, I will be primarily focusing on the slight risk region for central Texas. However, I might touch on this marginal threat a little bit. However, I might also not. I'm probably going to be primarily focusing on the slight risk region for central Texas. As for threats for today, we don't really have all that much of a tornado threat anywhere. As for wind, we do have a 15% wind threat for the slight risk region, which is going to be the primary threat for that slight risk region for central Texas. We also do have a 5% wind threat for that marginal threat for the Midwest and central plains. And as for hail, we do have a 5% hail threat for that slight risk region for central Texas, as well as a 5% hail threat for the marginal threat region for the Midwest and central plains. Taking a look at the tropics, primarily focusing on Hurricane Lee. Hurricane Lee has had a little bit more of an eastward trend. The warning cone was expected to have more of a direct impact on Maine earlier this week. However, that has shifted a little bit to the east because of that cold front and that trough that did pass through. That cold front did push it a little bit off to the east. However, even though we aren't expected to see direct impacts from Hurricane Lee or post-tropical cyclone Lee, it is currently a post-tropical cyclone and a tropical storm. We aren't expected to see any direct impacts from post-tropical cyclone Lee because of that cold front pushing it further to the east. However, we still are expected to see the threat of flash flooding. We do have a slight risk for eastern Maine for excessive rainfall across eastern Maine, so we could see the possibility of flooding as well as coastal flooding along the coast. We are expected to see storm surge of up to 3 feet across the New England coast. Anywhere where you see these tropical storm warnings, which are in the blue across the New England region, we are expected to see the threat of coastal flooding and 3 feet storm surge. 3 feet storm surge may not sound like a lot, but it could potentially be deadly if you do have any plans on the beach, which I'm not sure why you would have any plans on the beach with tropical storm Lee making its way through, but if you do have any plans at the beach, I do suggest canceling those plans, as 3 feet storm surge may not sound like a lot. However, it could become deadly very quickly. So do keep that in mind if you do live in this region. Even though we aren't expected to have major impacts from tropical storm Lee, it is still good that you are smart with Hurricane Lee and you aren't making stupid decisions with Hurricane Lee. Like, I do not suggest going out towards the coast. I do suggest staying indoors, and definitely watch for any storm surge if you live along the coast, as well as watch for flooding if you do live in any of the areas that could be prone to flooding from hurricane or post-tropical cyclone Lee. Taking a look at our radar Omega model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, focusing on the slight risk region for central Texas. You can see that we do have this subtropical jet that is very, very weak coming out of the Pacific. However, this is going to be the last day for severe thunderstorms for Texas, as we do have a little bit of a low pressure system off the coast of California, which is going to be preventing that subtropical jet from progressing across the southern United States. So, and with this trough coming south out of Canada across the Midwest, we are expected to see the last bit of that subtropical jet being used up to trigger severe thunderstorms across central Texas today. After the subtropical jet is used up by today, we aren't expected to see the possibility of rounds of convection across Texas. So today should be the last day of severe thunderstorms for Texas, and then this trough is going to be the primary focus for the rest of the week into early next week as well. And if we take a look at the marginal threat for the Midwest into central plains, you can see that this trough is continuing to progress, and we also do have a cold front attached to this as well. So this trough and cold front are going to trigger severe thunderstorms for this marginal threat across the Midwest and central plains, and this trough and cold front should continue its progression eastward, triggering severe thunderstorms for a vast majority of the eastern United States by tomorrow. And I will have a forecast on that for tomorrow as well, so do keep that in mind if you live across any of these regions. But if we go into more detail about the slight risk region and its various threats, starting off with our damaging wind potential, Our mid-level flow is fairly weak, so we aren't really expecting to see all that much of a hail potential for this region. However, we could see the possibility of some small hail across this region with some of those orographic elongated photographs. However, because of how weak this subtropical jet is, we aren't expected to see severely elongated photographs that would support a 15% hail threat or a driving hail threat for this slight risk region. The current driving threat for this slight risk region is going to be our damaging wind potential, because this subtropical jet is too weak to support severely elongated photographs to support anything above a 5% hail threat. However, we could still see the possibility of some small to medium hail across this region. So our primary threat is going to be damaging winds, with the secondary threat of small to medium hail across this slight risk region for central Texas. Taking a look at our dew points, focusing on the slight risk region for central Texas, you can see that we do have some fairly strong dew points across this region. We didn't have this towards the beginning of the week. We had much weaker dew points towards the beginning of the week. However, with the rounds of convection that we have had across Texas, we are expected to see building moisture across Texas, as well as some aid from the Gulf of Mexico. Again, we could see building moisture across Texas to support building instability across Texas, as well to support our severe thunderstorms and our rounds of severe thunderstorms across this region. So with dew points today in the upper 60s and the low 70s, we could definitely see some fairly strong instability. However, despite our very strong moisture that is building up across Texas because of these thunderstorms, the rounds of thunderstorms across this region is going to weaken our instability a little bit, as a lot of that instability has been being used up by the rounds of convection across this region. So we aren't expected to see very strong instability as what would typically be possible with dew points this strong. However, we could definitely see some fairly strong instability across this region, more so back towards the moderate range, getting anywhere from the 1000s range into the mid 2000s range. But then if we focus on the marginal threat for the Midwest into the Central Plains, you can see that we do have some moderate moisture across this region. We aren't expected to have very strong moisture like in Texas. However, this moisture, any dew points that are going to be anywhere from the upper 50s into the low 60s, will support moderate instability anywhere in the 1000s range. It likely isn't going to get into the 2000s range because this moisture is much weaker compared to the moisture in the dew points that we have across Texas. So we are expected to see weaker instability across this marginal threat region, but we could still see instability that would be indicative of this marginal threat and support our various threats for small hail and damaging winds across this region. Taking a look at our temperatures, focusing on the slight risk region for central Texas, you can see that we are expected to have some much cooler temperatures compared to last week. We are expected to see temperatures that are going to be fairly hot in some locations, getting into those 90s in some locations. However, they are much cooler compared to last week and the week before that. We aren't expected to see temperatures that are going to be in the widespread hundreds anymore, as these rounds of thunderstorms have definitely cooled things down a lot across Texas. But then if we take a look at the marginal threat for the Midwest into Central Plains, we do have a progressing cold front. You can see that cold front fairly prominently across the Midwest, across Iowa, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. You can definitely see that cold front fairly clearly between those light blues and yellows. And this cold front is expected to continue progressing eastward to trigger severe thunderstorms by tomorrow. But then if we take a look at Texas again, we do have a little bit of a stationary front. It is weak. It has weakened over the last couple of days. However, this will help aid in severe thunderstorm development across Texas. Taking a look at our instability, focusing on the slight risk region, you can see that we are expected to have some fairly strong instability across this region. We are expected to have Cape values that are going to be ranging anywhere from the mid 1000s range, getting into the 2000s range, and some of the mid 2000s, possibly into the upper 2000s across some of the southwestern side of that marginal threat. So we are expected to have some fairly strong instability across this region. However, it may be weaker than what we were expecting because of those rounds of convection that I mentioned earlier in the week. those rounds of convection have used up a lot of the instability across Texas, leading to overall weaker instability. However, this instability will still definitely be able to support the possibility of our damaging winds in that 15% damaging wind threat, as well as a threat of some small to medium hail with our orographic elongated photographs. But then if we take a look at the marginal threat for the Midwest into Central Plains, you can see that we do have some fairly moderate instability across this region. We are expected to see Cape values are going to be ranging anywhere from the widespread triple digits into the 1000s range, getting into the mid 1000s range, and that's going to be it as far as instability for the Midwest. And this will definitely be able to support the possibility of some damaging winds and the threat of small to medium hail with our mid-level flow aloft, leading to elongated photographs. We could see the threat of some small to medium hail, as well as a threat of some damaging winds across this region as well. Taking a look at our total precipitation, I did want to touch on this a little bit as far as our flooding potential with Hurricane Lee. You can see, focusing on Hurricane Lee mainly, we do have some flash flooding that we could see across more so eastern Maine. We do have some of these darker greens across eastern Maine with that slight risk for excessive rainfall. And then we also do have some of these lighter greens where we could see maybe some maybe a lower potential for some flash flooding and some rainfall across this region. However, overall, we aren't expected to see all that much of a flash flooding potential outside of Maine. Mainly across eastern Maine, we could see the possibility of some flash flooding in low-lying areas, but then we might also be able to see some coastal flooding along some of the coast with that 3-foot storm surge that I was mentioning towards the beginning of the video. We may be able to see a little bit of coastal flooding, but overall our flash flooding potential shouldn't be as high as what we had with Idalia. However, we could still see the possibility of some flash flooding across eastern Maine, as well as some of the coastal flooding with the storm surge and some of this rainfall that we could have along the coast. So do keep that in mind if you do live anywhere along the coast, and watch out for any coastal flooding if you do live along the coast and across eastern Maine as well. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out those show tools for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.